Evening and welcome to another episode of Fascination Street with Jimmy, Mika and Sarah.
Although the boy isn't here.
No.
But we are. And it is great to have you with us. Thank you so much for joining us and spending your time with us on Saturday evening, wherever you are in the world. It's been... there goes. Look at that. There's...
Such professionals.
Professionalism. Sorry about that.
It's all right.
Got to have a bit of feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the chat room already, we've got John aside. We have Philip Emery. We have Maggie, who's doing some wall art for our art wall.
Ta-da!
Anyone who'd like to add some art to our wall for us, you're more than welcome. You may have seen on Facebook that Michelle Embry has actually done a drawing for us, and it looks amazing.
We love it.
So we're hoping that we're going to be able to get that over to us. And your phone was going off as well then. Yes. So yeah, hopefully we'll be able to get that onto our wall as well. I have messaged her to see if we can get it. Such professionalism. But yeah, so looking forward to seeing some of your art. So thank you so much. We really do appreciate it, and it's fun to have up.
It's a bit like Art Attack, isn't it?
It is.
What was that one with Tony Hart and Morph?
Take Heart.
Thank you very much. And they'd have the viewers gallery where like all the children would send in their pictures, and then they'd have that like roll all the way through.
But we're having adults as well.
You can hear the music in your head now, can't you? That was used to play through that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
We've got Maggie in the chat room who's just said that she's actually doing diamond art for our wall. Can't wait to see that.
I think it's nice that she's brought us diamonds personally. So
That's cool.
Okay, so Mika is in the room with us, but he is playing Xbox with headphones on, so he can't hear us.
Mika, do you want a fiver?
Oh, look, he does turn around.
Oh, he does turn around for that. Yeah. He's more like his mum than he cares to mention. So today, in case you're wondering, today is International Chess Day.
Is it really?
I thought I'd just throw that into the conversation. Yeah, International Chess Day.
Thanks.
So yeah, those are in the States have got a few more hours to go. Why not phone up a friend, or you can just sit at home and play with yourself?
Yeah, or you can even play chess.
Exactly.
Mika is in the chat room. He's just messaged. He's got his phone with him. So yeah.
So you know, Mika, so the professionalism goes out the window.
Yeah.
Damn straight it does.
Yeah, and the vaping is on.
Yeah, vaping is on.
So anyone that's not happy with adult content, which could be, we never know what's going to be thrown in. Beware. You've been warned. Okay, so as you can see, we have Philip Mantle with us. And we have got some amazing stuff to go through tonight, which is part of the new book, or the new and improved, which I have been reading. I have read the new witness statements. I have read the regression that was done in September, and we are going to be talking about it tonight. And oh my, is it amazing.
And we're talking to the man who wrote it. It don't get much better than that. So,
yeah, I mean, I'm responsible for the regression, the transcript. Calvin still wrote most of the book.
You were the ghostwriter. Is that?
Well, I wrote parts of it. Calvin was ill during the writing of the book, so we had no choice, you know. But he's still responsible for the outline and what went in. Everything that we did all ran via Calvin, and if he didn't like it, we knew about it. He's still the boss. But you know, with the greatest respect to him, because he's a friend, there's no way he's going to do a transcript of his own hypnosis. You know, he doesn't like reading it anyway, because it brings back certain memories. For example, with the previous book, we had the hypnosis session with Bud Hopkins. Now, that was done in 1993 on a cassette tape. So I digitized it and I sent Calvin a copy on a CD. And I think he had it for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks before he'd actually sit down and listen to it, you know. And so I think it's the same with this. It might take him a while before he goes through it all. I mean, the transcript, because it does bring back certain memories. There's some funny parts in it as well. You might think, you know, this kind of regression, what can be funny about that? But believe it or not, there is, and we'll come to that. But for those who are not aware, the new book, you know, by Calvin Parker, it's called Pascagoula: The Story Continues.
Try again.
And as Sarah's pointed out, it does indeed carry on from where the last one left off.
Yeah.
Because when I got in touch with Calvin to begin with, he'd lost pretty much everything in Hurricane Katrina.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, his house was under, I don't know, 10, 12 feet of water.
Mm-hmm.
So we had to start from scratch. He'd no photo. That's why you don't see any photographs of him as a child.
Mm.
They're all gone.
Lost the whole thing.
I mean, everything.
Wow.
So,
and he never spoke to his family about it for what, 40 odd years?
He told them the basics, but that was it.
Yeah.
So whilst he was able to tell me what had happened and what have you, when it came to anything to support it, we had to start from scratch. So the first thing we did was go around all the UFO groups saying, do you have anything on Pascagoula? And they all cooperated, guys. You know, it was great. And then you continue. Somebody said to me, how do you get all these details, Philip? I said, well, you just ask the question, you know.
Yeah.
You know, certain people have been involved for a long time. So if they were around back in the 70s, well, ask them, you know, do you have anything? So even though we'd written the first book, we were still asking the questions, and other things turned up. And of course, the first thing was Calvin did some local TV in the Pascagoula, Mississippi area. And that particular little TV slot that he did went onto YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
And a young lady wrote on it, you know, comment, my mum and dad were on the opposite side of the river that night, and they saw this too. Words to that effect. I can't remember the exact words. So I'm reading, I'm thinking, what? You know, because the Pascagoula River is a big river. You know, they do shipbuilding on it even still now. So
yeah. So
I contacted this young girl, and she says, I'll ask for mum and dad if you can speak to them. And she gave us the telephone number. Now, this was Mr. and Mrs. Blair, who now live in Alabama, but it's not that far away. And they were sort of the first of the batch of witnesses that came forward. Now, for those who are not aware, Mr. and Mrs. Blair were on the opposite side of the river that night. He worked in the fishing industry, was waiting for a boat to come in. It was late. So he has a little bit of a sleep in the back of the car. And Mrs. Blair is looking out across the other side, and she sees the blue light over the other side.
Yeah.
Her husband saw it. And at this point, their boat came in. So he's a bit grumpy, for want of a better word, and I don't blame him. They walk along this dark pier, pitch black, and Mrs. Blair chucks his stuff on it. And just as she's about to do that, she says there's this almighty splash in the river next to her. And when she said, when I look down, there's this strange grey person.
Wow.
In the water, you know. And she said he went under, and off he went. Now, Mr. Blair said he saw the blue lights and he heard the splash, but he never saw the funny man, the grey man.
Mm-hmm.
However, just recently he's been very ill.
He went through heart surgery, didn't he? He had 15% of the heart working.
Yeah, so literally from the hospital, Mrs. Blair phoned me. She said, he's just told me, Philip, that he did see the creature. And he's kept it to himself all these years. And he wants to tell me now just in case the worst thing happens. So I'm literally on the telephone to this gentleman, you know, while he's lying in his hospital bed. So Mrs. Blair gave us a statement, Mr. Blair did, and then she also filmed him on the camera phone, and sent me a little video of him. And he sat up in bed, you know, with his stickers on, and he said, you know, and he told me the story. So we quoted that, and then that's all in the book. And he said, I did see, he calls it the humanoid.
Yeah.
I did
But he
see
didn't think anyone would believe him, did he? So he kept it to himself.
it came out, it went back across the river, back across the water. And he said, I saw the UFO take off, you know.
Wow.
And it's almost like a deathbed confession because he was having surgery the following day. And Mrs. Blair was stunned. But having said that, when I go right back to when we first spoke to Mrs. Blair, she said to me on the telephone, she said, you know, I often wondered, Philip, if something similar hadn't happened to us that happened to Charlie and Calvin. So she had that idea even then, long before Mr. Blair said any of this. So they kind of set the ball rolling when it came to new witness. I mean, it's astounding. Even if it was just them, that would be enough. But then Calvin Parker, when the first book came out, did a book signing in Pascagoula. There's people coming up saying, you know, nice to meet you, Mr. Parker, sign this. And there's a gentleman said, oh, by the way, I saw it that night.
Yeah.
Off he went.
Just some random guy in the queue.
Just buying a book. Now, Calvin didn't have a chance to grab hold of him. So we were fortunate that somebody was taking photographs at the time. And we had a picture of this gentleman buying the book from Calvin. No idea who he was. So we put that photograph on social media 3 times, 3 different separate occasions. On the third occasion, a lady came forward and she said, I know him. And I know his nieces or his nephew, some family member. I'll get her contact details for you and see if it's all right. And she did. Now, that was Mr. Lewis Lee. Now, Mr. Lee worked in the shipyard. And he was doing what they call moonlighting. In those days, you had your regular job. And sometimes you'd work for somebody else, but you weren't supposed to. And he was working in one of the cranes that night in the shipyard on the opposite side of the river. And he said, I'll never forget it, Philip. He said, as soon as I got in my cab, which was about 10 or 12 feet, you know, off the ground, he says, you could see this thing out across the river. Sarah's nodding because she's read it. Unlike you, she's read it.
He was in the crane, wasn't he? And everything stopped.
Yeah. But he said to me on the phone, he says, you know, Philip, he said, it's the damnedest thing you ever did see. I can't do the southern accent, you know what I mean?
No.
And I mean, he told his family about it. He never kept it a secret, but he never went public as such. Mm. So that was Mr. Lee. And then others, you know, seemed to just come forward, or they'd mention on social media that they'd seen something. So we'd contact them, and then either myself or my colleague, Dr. Irina Scott, she would interview them because it's easier for her to do it in the States with the various time differences and what have you. And slowly but surely, we built up what you might call a portfolio of additional eyewitnesses, you know, in and around the area. We live with another lady. She lived in Mississippi, but she was several hundred miles away, and she saw something that night. Now, before we started recording, mentioned that we've actually made a documentary with Reality Entertainment, and it's here. This is my copy. This comes out early next year. I haven't got a definitive date yet, but the producer, a chap called Jay Michael, he also saw it that night in Mississippi, but he lived about 100 miles away.
Wow.
So the documentary actually starts with the producer saying, this is what I saw. He was 11 years old or something like that at the time, you know. It's a picture of him in there. He's got glasses and a beard, you know. Yeah. And so that's how the documentary starts.
Is it Mr. Lee?
No, it's Mr. J. Michael, his name is. And Mr. Lee's the old boy with white hair and glasses.
There you go.
No, that's J. Allen Hynek.
Wrong one.
How can you get J. Allen Hynek mixed up with someone else?
Yeah, I'm going the wrong way.
So what this documentary does, Jimmy, it interviews some of the main eyewitnesses plus Calvin, and there's some animation of how things happened that night and so on. So it starts off with the producer who lived 100 miles away, He said, I saw something that night.
There's
And
Michael Long.
it goes through it step by step.
So there's Michael Long.
That's him. That's the guy with the striped shirt and the dark glasses and the beard. Yeah, that's him. Yeah, J. Michael. I forgot his surname, but it's J. Mike. I just call him J. Michael.
Long. J. Michael Long.
Yeah. So he's the producer of the documentary, but he saw it himself that night as well, which helps. So it's an interesting, and just this last couple of weeks, we've had 2 more.
Wow.
Yeah. Some have yet to be interviewed, but one we've already interviewed, and he saw something a year later. But where this incident took place on the river, it's not in the middle of nowhere, Jimmy. It is literally at the side of the road, the highway, the bridge goes right across the river, and you can see it. Yeah,
I done a Google plonk on it, and it's not like it's the middle of nowhere at all. I mean, like playing devil's advocate. I mean, like so many people will say, well, the story's well known now, and so many people can jump on a bandwagon and stuff like that. But I mean, anyone that spends any time at all with Calvin will know what a genuinely beautiful, sincere person that he really is.
Yeah.
And mate, it just, I don't know.
When we go back to when the story first was in print in book form, was with Charles Hickson, who's now dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He wrote a book in 1983 with a chap called William Mendez. And in that book, there is an eyewitness. He was a naval officer off duty at the time in a car with some friends. When we published Calvin's book, the first hint we had of other witnesses was I was contacted by a Greek researcher called Stephanos. I'll try and pronounce his surname. I never get it right. Stephanos Panagiotakis. Right? There's a connection, if sorts, with you, Jimmy, because he was in the Merchant Navy.
Yeah.
And they were docked in Pascagoula. So being a UFO researcher, he took the time out while they got shore leave, which got extended, and he went and interviewed Charles Hickson and others. And because he was Greek, it was introduced to a pastor, a clergyman, who was of Greek descent. And that clergyman saw the UFO that night.
Wow.
The clergyman was going to he used to sort of host an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. And he was going to that with 2 colleagues, and he was belting down the road, and he said the UFO went across the road in front of him. So what Stephanos did, he got in the car with him, they drove the same route. He says, tell me when you get to the place where you saw it. And he just took a photograph through the window, had the photograph printed out, and the chap drew the UFO on the actual photograph, of what they saw. And it was heading in the direction of where Charlie and Calvin were. So once you get to talk to Calvin in depth, you then realize that the location isn't an out of the way place, So we suspected that there was always the possibility that somebody might come forward, but we didn't expect what has happened with so many people. And Mr. and Mrs. Blair also seeing the creatures, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
And Mr. Blair's almost deathbed confession, which was amazing. We shouldn't have been surprised, but we were, So those are the new witnesses. And I think when you add all that up with all the other information, it proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that whatever Calvin and Charlie experienced that night was real,
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Blair, it was Mrs. Blair that actually said that she saw one of them being taken up into the craft as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've never met any of them, of course, but I've spoken to a lot of them on the telephone.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were later interviewed by Irina, mostly by Dr. Scott, Irina Scott.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating, and I'm sure that more will come forward. I'll make a prediction there for you, Sarah. Let's see if I'm right or not.
I wouldn't be surprised.
No, it won't surprise me either. We do know, for example, we got a gentleman on social media saying I had some nieces who saw it that night. So I've got a telephone number for him, but he won't put us in touch with his nieces. So we know there's others out there, for want of a better phrase. It's just a question of whether they'll come forward or whether we'll find them or bump into them. Because Calvin's doing another book signing in Pascagoula on the 18th. So it wouldn't surprise me if somebody came forward and said, "Oh, I'll buy a copy of this, Mr. Parker. And oh, by the way, I saw it as well." A sort of a friend of Calvin's, he sent us a little video of an old boy who remembered seeing something, but he's getting a bit too old, I think, to make a great deal of sense out of what he was saying. That's no disrespect, so there are others. It's just wait and see if we track any of them down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had a message for a question from the chat room, Pat. Let me bring it up on screen so you can see it. Did anyone ever get a visit from the Men in Black? Do you know whether?
No, not at all. The only not official visit, but semi-official, was literally within 72 hours. Dr. Alan Hynek arrived, but he was paying for it himself. And a chap called Dr. James Harder. He worked for an organization called APRO. And they both arrived. James Harder hypnotized Charlie and Calvin. Calvin wouldn't really cooperate. But we managed to find that particular transcript of his hypnosis online, believe it or not, from 1973. And it's in the book. It only lasts 11 minutes.
Yeah.
But we've not found Charlie's original transcript. However, in 1974, Dr. James Harder and Dr. Leo Sprinkle regressed Charlie Hickson, and that's in the book. And we found that quite by accident. Now, Dr. James Harder is no longer with us, but Dr. Leo Sprinkle is, and I happen to know him. He spoke at one of the conferences I did many years back.
Oh, wow.
But he's one of these gentlemen that, he's getting on a bit now, doesn't use the internet. He has no email. So you have to do the old-fashioned thing, write him a letter, and he remembers it.
I'm all for that. I love that.
But we found that transcript or that hypnosis via a third party. And then, of course, we went back to where Bud Hopkins has his archive. Bud is sadly no longer with us, but his research archive is with Dr. David Jacobs in the States.
Yeah.
Now, David Jacobs, again, he's getting a bit old. He provided us with Calvin Parker's 1993 hypnosis, but he was unaware that Charlie Hickson had also been hypnotized by Bud Hopkins twice in the 1980s. I mean, Bud's archive is huge, so I don't expect Dr. Jacobs to know everything that's in it. But one of the things that Bud did when he did hypnosis, he'd record it in a blog book. So you go and look the log up and you can find it. Anyway, you found the two tapes of Charlie Hickson being hypnotized in, I think 1985 was one. The second one was 1989. And yours truly got the task of transcribing those. And again, they're all in the book. So this was all new information that was coming forward. Then, not that long ago, Calvin was speaking at the International UFO Congress in Phoenix, Arizona. Just happened to have a booth next to Kathy Marden. And they, of course, anybody that knows Calvin, they get on like a house on fire. He's a good old boy, chat with anybody, And of course, Kathy Marden is trained in regression and hypnotherapy and all kinds of stuff. She's the niece of Betty Hill. So the opportunity arose for Kathy to come to Pascagoula and regress Calvin again, which she did on the 14th of September of this year. So it's only over it's about a month ago, literally a month back. And the beauty of technology, thankfully, is I had the audio file from it the next day. I didn't have to wait for the cassette to travel across the Atlantic, and me going backwards and forwards on my old cassette. Some people say, what the hell's he on about, a cassette? What's one of them?
I bet you just brought a cassette Walkman.
Yeah. Well, I had to buy one to do these transcripts. Now, what is interesting in what Kathleen did, I mean, she did an excellent professional job. I hope that comes across in the transcript, because it certainly did when you listen to the audio.
It does.
Yeah.
And she took Calvin right back, and he's actually had 4 encounters. One when he was 9, I believe. One was when he was 13.
That's right.
One when he was 18 in 1970, and then another one in 1993. And he remembers a lot about it without the hypnosis. People are saying, oh, it's the hypnosis that's done this. Well, no, it's not. He did remember, like, all he said is it clarified certain things for him.
Implanted memories and all things like, I mean, that's what you're going to get. When anyone says they've been regressed, hypnotized, they'll be like, well, you know, they could have put memories in. I mean, how you do that, I have no idea personally.
But she done an amazing job in making sure that any future encounters that he has, that he will remember them, he will log them. And she took him back and recalled minute by minute every single bit of information that he could remember, and then went to his subconscious.
I mean, the question she uses most is what happened next. No leading question, and a lot of the times Calvin would say, I don't know, and so there was no leading. What happened next? I don't know. What time was it? I don't know. He don't wear a watch even now.
No.
So, for example, some people say, well, why is a watch important? Well, back on October the 11th, 1973, when him and Charlie had the encounter on the riverbank, they were escorted, in inverted commas, into town to go to the police station, you know, and they did a detour, and they stopped at the Mississippi Press offices, the newspaper offices. Now, people have said, oh, they went straight away to the media to report it. No, they didn't. They knew it was closed. What they actually went there for was because they thought it had a clock on the back wall. They used to leave the lights on a night and you could see in. They were looking to find out what time it was. You know, why they didn't ask the police, I don't know. But they actually went there to see what time it was, you know. And so they weren't going to try and tell the story. They knew the place was closed. I think there were some cleaners in there, you know, cleaning the floor. They just wanted to know what time it was. And even today, he still doesn't wear a watch, you know. And we were talking at the beginning, you know, about how can there be funny things happen, you know, during an encounter like this. Well, in Calvin's 1993 missing time episode, he's retelling it under hypnosis. Bearing in mind his wife's there as well, Wynette. And Calvin said, my wife had made me a packed lunch. And she made me this sandwich, and he says, it was a god-awful sandwich you ever take. You know, so we've got this running joke now about these god-awful sandwiches that his wife makes, you know.
Yeah.
And, people have no idea what we're talking about. It's like an in-joke. Like on Facebook, just yesterday, Calvin says, I'm thinking about going out and fishing at the same time, on the same date, at the same spot. So I said something like, well, they'll not come back now, Calvin, after they tasted one of your wife's sandwiches. You know what I mean? People must be thinking, what's these two nuts going on about, you know?
Yeah, is this what's going on?
It is an in-joke. But that's Calvin. He's got that sense of humour anyway.
He's brilliant. I mean,
look at this. There's the picture of Calvin in his bed, while being regressed. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's Kathy, of course, next. He said, I said to him, why did you get into bed? He said, I don't know. He just thought
it'd be more comfortable.
Well, yeah, he said to her, how long is it going to take? And she said, well, it'd be 2 or 3 hours. So he thought, well, I might as well lie down in bed. It just kind of made sense to him. Yeah. If I'm going to be laid down somewhere for 2 or 3 hours, I'll do it in comfort. I'll lie in the bed, you know.
There's some of the information that she got out of him, like the electric balls being shot him. I'm not going to go too much into it because obviously I don't want to give too much away. But and the black blood.
Yeah. For those who wonder what we're talking about, in the 1993 encounter, he meets the sort of theme between all 4 encounters is this female. God, females! Oh my God!
Yeah, but she is actually a female-looking person. He described her.
Yeah.
He described what she's wearing.
Yeah.
How she looks. But he has an encounter with her.
Yeah.
That ends up in almost like a fight.
Oh yeah, definitely. He said I wanted to kill her.
Yeah, grabbed her around the neck. They got into a fight, and
she was bleeding. He was bleeding. Before that, he said all these little balls of electricity were flying around. We'll call it inside the UFO, for want of a better phrase.
In one of the
rooms. And he said I tried to dodge them, and when they hit you, it hurts.
Yeah, they stung.
He thought, I've had enough of this, and his intention was to kill himself, but take her with him. So he was actually looking for a way out. He assumed he was up high somewhere, and his idea was, I'm going to grab this bitch. That's what he called her, and I'm going to take her with me, and he's banging her head against the wall and what have you. And then I think she gets to the stage where she's had enough, and of course there's one of these big ugly creatures stood there doing nothing. She kind of makes this funny noise, and it grabs hold of Calvin, and game over,
And this thing that actually moves is the one that actually takes him from the side of the river out into the craft. Yeah. But he does nothing. It's almost like he goes static and just stands in the room.
Calvin refers to him as being mechanical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't know that. It's just an inference. That's just the impression he gets. And what is curious is when he's back on the fishing boat this time, it's now dark. Hours have gone by, so he goes back in, and his wife's been out looking for him because he was only supposed to be there for a couple of hours, and she actually left a note under his windscreen wiper. Calvin, where the hell are you?
Wow.
And of course he got home. He's in this disheveled state, and he's covered in this mucky stuff. And she says, "What's happened?" He says, "Oh, I just had boat trouble." And he wouldn't tell her.
Wow.
And
oil.
Yeah, just said I had boat problems, and it's fascinating. But like I say, the common denominator among all 4 of his encounters is this female creature. Non-human. He doesn't know what she is. He doesn't know what they are. He calls them aliens, but he said, "I've no idea. You tell me. I'm looking for answers. I call them aliens. I don't know what they are. And so that's where the funny bit came in about this. It was a bologna sandwich. Now, believe it or not, in the Bud Hopkins transcript, he mentions a bologna sandwich. I forgot what the hell he was talking about. Because you remember, I'm a northern lad, as you might recognise.
No.
Calvin's from the southern states. Then you have Bud Hopkins from New York, and I've got all this mixing in my earphones, trying to figure out what they're saying. And they're talking quietly because it's under hypnosis. And I couldn't figure it out. So I spelt it as a blondie sandwich. Because that's what it sounded like to me. Calvin said, I would have loved a blondie sandwich, but I never got the chance.
Who wouldn't, right?
But he didn't tell me until after the book was out. He just left it in there. He just thought it was funny. I said, well, you could have told me. I could have changed it. He just thought it was funny. It's just his sense of humor. So, a blondie sandwich, but it's bologna,
So that's that explained the taste of it then, I'm assuming, if it was a blondie sandwich.
Well, yeah. So
I just that bologna tastes like dog food.
I assume so. I wouldn't know. So that's why we've said as like the subtitle to the book, New Evidence, New Witnesses, because that's exactly what it is.
Well, I'll put the link in the chat room, Phil. So,
okay, this is a question from one of the guys in the chat room. Were all of Calvin's encounters with the same group of ETs?
Absolutely.
Yes, they were.
absolutely. The common denominator, the first two when he was 9 and 13, is just this woman.
Yeah.
And but then the two sort of events later in life, this woman is involved, and then you have these weird mechanical humanoid things. They were grey, wrinkly skinned, didn't have any neck. They had protrusions sticking out the side of their head. There's one of them there.
Like all of the alien encounters and that you hear people speak of and bits and pieces. I mean, you've never heard of anyone else describe anything like that, have you?
No.
I mean, it's
Greys. They look with the almond eyes.
Yeah.
But these, they didn't have anything as like eyes, ears, nose, anything like that. It was no neck.
Wrinkly.
He classed these spikes looking like carrots that you would use in a snowman.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And both
I've read it.
Calvin and Charlie.
I know.
Calvin and Charlie both describe them the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so they're either telling the truth or they're lying.
No.
Now they can't be lying because we've got eyewitnesses to what happened.
Yeah,
exactly.
So therefore, they have to be telling.
You can't lie.
No.
And of course, they reported it immediately, well, almost immediately, to the Air Force Base at Keesler, who weren't interested. Then to the police.
Yeah.
And the police secretly recorded them, and they were both still terrified.
Yeah.
What is kind of ironic is after the story got out, they took them to the local hospital to be examined, and somebody mentioned radiation, and the hospital says, we can't check for that. So they took them to Keesler Air Force Base, which had basically told them to get lost when they phoned them, and checked them for radiation. And they didn't have any radiation, of course, but it was, while you're here, can you tell us what happened? And it was recorded because we have a transcript of the interview they did at Keesler Air Force Base, which is in the first book, of course. Now, I contacted Keesler Air Force Base and said, have you got anything? Oh, we haven't got anything. Well, you must have. I've got the transcript, which got official heading. It tells you all the military personnel by name who were there that day. So where's the tape recording? Oh, we haven't got anything. Well, I can't say you have, but you did have at some point. So kind of ironic. Here's a little curious thing for you. And a year later, to the day, a gentleman contacted me who was training to go in the Air Force at Keesler Air Force Base, right? And he heard a story about two guys being brought in about being abducted by a UFO. Not a year previously, but then. The curious thing is, they used to all come in on the bus on a morning into the base. And he said, I saw my car in the carpool. I said, well, what's wrong with that? He said, but I hadn't bought that car. I bought it in 1995 or whenever. So he saw his future car in the carpool. And he said, I knew, I could tell the date because on the back seat was a map. I think his sister bought him, and that was lying on the back seat. Make of it what you will.
Yeah.
So he saw his car from the future at Keesler Air Force Base a year later.
That is mental.
And I've written that story up. I mean, it's there. I'll send it to you anyway later, Jimmy.
Yeah.
Because I thought originally he was talking about 1973. He said, no, this was exactly a year later, Philip. What I'm
it was the 46th anniversary yesterday, wasn't it?
That's right. It was the anniversary, October the 11th, 1973. And again, for those that are not aware, in June of this year, the town the town of Pascagoula unveiled a historical marker close to where this happened. And it commemorates the event and Charlie and Calvin. Now, originally, that was going to be the end of the book, the second book. Because it seemed an appropriate place to finish, with the marker and everything. And then, of course, the regression with Kathy Martin came afterwards. So that had to go in at the end. There it is.
That is
Do you want to read the marker out?
the marker,
Yeah.
and that's where it is close
Yeah.
to where.
I'll read it.
And standing next to it there is Eddie Hickson. That is Charlie Hickson's son.
Wow. Right. So on the marker, because I've never read the marker, I've only ever seen the pictures of it.
Yeah.
So you got the Pascagoula UFO 1973. It was the evening of October the 11th, 1973, when two local shipyard workers went fishing. Charles Hickson and Calvin Parker had picked their spot on the west bank of the East Pascagoula River between the railroad and Highway 90 bridge. As dusk fell, a buzzing sound alerted them to a football-shaped craft hovering behind them. Out of the craft glided three creatures who carried them back into a space vehicle. Parker fell unconscious and Hickson was paralyzed. Inside the craft, Hickson was examined by a robotic eye. Then both men were deposited back on the riverbank and the spaceship shot away. The men promptly reported the encounter to the Jackson County Sheriff's Department. A secretly made recording, legal at the time, when the men were alone, confirmed that they were terrified and had no intentions of deception. The next day, they were transported to Keesler Air Force Base, where they were interviewed and received a negative check for radiation. Subsequently, Hickson passed a lie detector test. As word flashed through the news, hordes of unidentified flying object investigators descended upon Jackson County. One of these was Dr. J. Allen Hynek, professor of astronomy at Northwestern University and a leading UFO expert in America. He went to Pascagoula and interviewed the men, concluding, "These men have had a very real, frightening experience. They are absolutely honest. They have had a fantastic experience." Hickson even appeared on the Dick Cavett Show, a popular late-night TV talk show, and interest in the event went worldwide. Over the years, multiple magazine articles and two full-length books have told the story. There are plenty of theories about the occurrence, ranging from hoax to hypnagogic. Never heard of that one. Reverie, semi-awake dreaming, to a true encounter. Regardless, it remains one of the best documented case of alien abductions, particularly since there is a secret tape involved, not one, but two witnesses. Well, we know there's even more than that now. And that weren't bad with a head full of painkillers, was it?
Yeah, that was good. Well done, mate. If you weren't joined up right, you'd have struggled, wouldn't you? No, but what is interesting is that the sort of Town Historic Society had a proposal for a marker by a doctor, somebody or other, but there would seem to be no point in doing it. Then once Calvin stepped out of the shadows and wrote his book, they said, now's the time to do it. And the money for it was raised locally. It's not out of taxpayers' money. There's three supporters on the bottom of there. They all raised the money. Now, so it's not our idea. We help with some of the wording on the plaque, and it is only minor parts. The only major thing is there's an actual drawing, if you like, of the encounter. And that was done by a colleague of ours in Poland. And that is the actual design for the Spanish edition of Calvin's book. So there is a direct link to his book, albeit in Spanish. And of course, when they unveiled it, Calvin was very tearful. He was very emotional. Say Charlie Hickson's family came along, and Calvin said, when I died, I wouldn't mind my ashes being scattered underneath it, And so that was originally going to be the end of the book. I'm not really aware of any marker like that that's being put up while somebody's still alive. I know there is one where Betty and Barney Hills incident happened. Yeah. You can go out in the desert in Roswell, and there's one said this is the crash site. I don't think anybody thinks it's real. It's just stuck in the desert somewhere, Yeah. I
mean, things like this are normally posthumous, aren't they? So
yeah. So he was extremely emotional, and what we didn't know, they actually made a replica of it and gave that to Calvin to take home. So he has that at home as well, which I thought was a lovely gesture. So, like I said, that was originally going to be the end of the follow-up book, but then Kathy came along with the regression, so that kind of finished the book off there. So we've got to draw a line in the sand somewhere, Calvin. So we decided no matter what happens now, You know, even if you find the left leg of the alien in deep freeze somewhere, we're going to leave that. You know, that we've drawn the line. That is it.
Yeah.
So it was, you know, the amount. I mean, you mentioned Alan Hynek there. A colleague in Canada found a tape recording of Hynek back in the 70s giving a lecture there, and again he digitized it. And Hynek, as part of his lecture, talked about Pascagoula. So we got permission to use that. I mean, you know, that had never seen the light of day.
I think there audio on YouTube of Hynek talking about Pascagoula.
Yeah, there's several audio clips that, you know, most of those are with Charlie Hickson, but this was a lecture he was giving. I think it's also on YouTube now. The whole lecture is, and the link is in the book. But I wasn't interested in the whole lecture. I just wanted to concentrate on what he said about Charlie and Calvin. We even have a quote from that on the back cover. What is also interesting is that at that time, the main debunker in America was a gentleman called Philip Klass.
Yeah.
He was an aviation writer. Now, again, on social media, a rather skeptical gentleman said, I actually have an unpublished article written by Philip Klass. It's only 3 pages long. It's about Pascagoula. I said, can I have it? So he sent me it, basically calling it a hoax, which he did about pretty much everything. But Philip Klass's archives were stored at some such place. So I contacted the archives, and they said, yeah, he has a whole file on it. It's 180 odd pages long. So, wow. Yeah, so I went through the whole file. Basically, Klass wasn't trying to investigate the case. He was just trying to dig some dirt on it, which is far different from investigation, you know? Yeah. So I asked Calvin about this. He said, oh, yeah, I remember I met that fella just the once. So we tell the story of Calvin's encounter with Philip Klass, and it didn't end well for Mr. Klass that night, because I think I toned it down a little bit in the book. Well, I asked Calvin to tone it down a bit, you know. Basically, he was calling him a liar, and, you know, a young Calvin wouldn't take kindly to anybody calling him a liar, you know. So what we've done, we've put the article in there. You can read Calvin's encounter with Philip Klass, and if you go to Calvin's website, the whole file of Philip Klass is there, so you can see what I'm actually saying, and you can read his whole file. And you mentioned the Dick Cavett show there,
yeah,
with Charlie Hickson. That was like, you know, the most popular nighttime talk show of its kind. Well, we haven't been able to find a copy of it. However, in Philip Klass's archive, he's obviously got access to it somehow, and he actually writes a transcript of what they say during the Dick Cavett show. So whilst we've not got the video in that file,
the transcript is there.
Wow.
So, you know, rather than put it all in the book, I said, we'll put the whole file on Calvin's website, which is www.calvin/ sorry, one of them things, parker.com. And it's there. You can view the whole file at your leisure, download it, keep it, whatever you want to do with it. There's all kinds of other stuff in there, but basically it's trying to dig dirt. The good thing about Philip Klass is he kept copies of his own letters. So he's writing to people, and you can actually see what he's asking for. You're not trying to guess. You can see he's not trying to do any research. He's looking for dirt to dig. And of course, he basically, his argument was that the polygraph that Charlie Hickson had wasn't conducted in the correct way, or the examiner wasn't fully qualified.
Yeah.
And that was his only objection, you know.
Well, because didn't Charlie refuse a second one?
He did later on, yes, but he wanted to do it under his own steam, you know, his own control. I mean, Calvin's had one, and he hasn't got a copy of it. It's gone. I mean, we've got in Calvin's first book, we've actually got the polygraph printout of Charlie's. I don't know what it says, but there's a copy of it, you know. So we did find a copy of the actual printout. It's on the old sort of graph paper. Remember the old graph paper?
Yeah. I mean, I imagine it must have been positive. Otherwise, there would have been someone web slinging it by now, right?
Yeah. So I said to Calvin, would you take a polygraph test? He said, if some damn fool's daft enough to pay for it, yes. I've had one before. So I'm not paying for it, you know. And so, you know, and it's as simple as that. But the thing about a polygraph, then or now, if you pass it, they say, well, it's not legal. If you fail it, you're a liar. So anyway, it's of no use really. But what is interesting, you know, when it comes to hypnosis, and it has its critics, and probably rightly so. When Calvin will tell you about the night in 1973, so we're driving up to this place. Bearing in mind he's never been there before. He says we passed another car on the way in. It was parked up. I think it was a courting couple. And he could tell you the make and model of the car. Fine, no problem. I can't remember what it was, but he'll tell you the make and the model. Under hypnosis with Bud Hopkins, he could tell you the registration of it.
Wow.
So what Calvin did, he hired a private detective. I've only recently found this out, to go and find out who, this is many years later, obviously, this was 1993, he had the hypnosis. He hired a private detective to find out who the owners were of that car, because he'd now got the license plate, and he found the people. The gentleman in the car that night was deceased. The lady who was in the car that night was now in a nursing home, and she was getting on. But Calvin went to see her, and she said, yeah, we saw it, and we got the hell out of there. But he said, you know, I don't know if she's still alive. She asked me to not tell anybody who she was, because she was very ill. You know, she was getting on in life. But the point is, he was able to remember the license plate under hypnosis.
That's mad.
And then, as a result, find the owners. And that's crazy, isn't it? That's crazy. I mean, I've only recently found out
they got under aggression, especially Kathleen. The way she got so much information out of him was
now you know why I want her
amazing.
on the show.
Yeah, and I said to her, I said, you know, you were the consummate professional. That's the only way I can describe it. With the greatest of respect to Bud, he wasn't a professionally trained hypnotherapist. He learned, you know, hypnosis. But I still don't think he did anything wrong. You know, I'm not suggesting that. Yeah. But when you listen to Bud's hypnosis, you keep thinking, well, ask him this question, and he doesn't. Whether he thought he may get another chance at it later on, I don't know. I think I'll save that for later. But you know, but Kathleen does ask the questions, but in a way that she doesn't lead him either. And a lot of the time, he doesn't know. He said, I don't know. And she'll say, have a think about it. And he still says, I don't know, you know. So when you add all that up, I don't think there's any argument about what happened that night. I think if you were to take that to a court of law, you would win beyond reasonable doubt that something bizarre happened that night.
Well, the witnesses that saw it flying over, the witnesses across the river.
Yeah. You know, out walking a dog that night. There was Mrs. Judy Branning. They were on a double date. They were cruising. What Americans used to do is, look at me, I'm driving around in the car. You know, she saw it that night, you know, and a lot of them didn't necessarily come forward. We got a hint that they'd possibly seen something, and we had to sort of dig them out. And you know, make of it what you will. You know, I think we can prove the case. You know, I didn't have any doubts anyway, but I don't think there's any other. I mean, if you think about Betty and Barney Hill, they had no witnesses, no eyewitnesses to it at all. You know, we rely on their testimony and that of Dr. Benjamin Simon, who did the hypnosis with them, and so on. And
not alone.
Yeah, and some sort of circumstantial evidence, but I don't know of any other like what's been uncovered with Calvin. And I'm not claiming, you know, I'm responsible for it. It just happened. It could have been anyone else asking the same damn questions, you know. Yeah. And if they had been, they would have found the same thing because the information was there. And like we said, more will happen. We don't know what. And another gentleman came forward, and it was kind of bittersweet. He saw something a couple of days later. He said, I saw it on the local TV news. And he says there was two stations, one taking it seriously, one having a laugh. Mm-hmm. And they said, we're all going out to this airfield. It was called the St. Elmo Airfield, just a little private airfield. And we're going to see if we can see something. So he said, I'd actually hurt my ankle at work. I've got it in a plaster cast. So I wasn't working. So he said, I put the wife and this baby, got a baby in the car with a flask, got my camera, and off we went. So when we got to this airfield, he says, there were hundreds there. And I even found a little newspaper cutting that talked about it. And the police eventually turned up and said, scram. So he said, I left, but I didn't go the main way back. I went sort of around the back of the airfield, down this road, and I parked up. And he said, we saw this thing in the field, and off it went. And he said, but it was very slow. And he said, I didn't have to run after it. I could walk, and he filmed it. A little 8mm camera.
Wow. So
I said to him, it's a longer story, but I said to him, have you still got the film? He said, I might have. He said, he said, my mum's died and we've got all her furniture stored in this particular room and everything's in there. Anyway, he found it. He drove to Calvin's house, dropped it off. So Calvin took a few photos of him while he's there and he drew what he'd seen. And I spoke to him, on the phone and got a description of everything. And he sent me the film. Unfortunately, it got damaged. So no images left on it. So it was bittersweet because he told me it got damaged. He said, but, so it supported his story, but unfortunately his story was correct and it was damaged. So I've sent him it back and thanked him. But the story's in the book. So the thing is, there were things seen before Calvin's encounter in 1973 and afterwards in and around the same area.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we mentioned before we started talking about the recent documentary series that's been on TV called Unidentified. Mm-hmm. And they've mainly concentrated on sightings by the Navy. Now, they've been in touch with myself and my colleague Paul Stonehill. So I've said to them, are you aware? I said, I think it's less than 3 weeks after Calvin's encounter on the Pascagoula River. There was two little boats out on the river fishing. And they were further up the river, going out towards the mouth of the river. And they saw something underwater. And not only did they see something underwater, there was a Coast Guard station there that was manned. They went and reported it in person to the Coast Guard station, who then went on their boat, and they went and saw this blue thing under the water and chased it for 20 minutes.
Wow.
The Coast Guard documents, we've got all the names of the eyewitnesses, and I recently got a photograph of all the eyewitnesses. And we have, there was a well-known UFO researcher in the 70s and 80s called Leonard Stringfield. He's no longer with us, but they actually wrote to the Coast Guard, wrote to him on handwriting and they're in letters. And we have their letters to Leonard Stringfield, copies of the handwritten letters about the incident that night, and that's in the book. So, and that was the Coast Guard. So we have things before and after in and around the area, and even, strange as it may seem to some, under the water, this blue illuminated thing under the water.
Wow. I mean, there is so much in that book. There really is. I mean, as soon as you got it, I had to flick through it.
What I've said to the production company, I know you've concentrated on the Navy. I can understand why. They're actually reading the book that Paul Stonehill and I co-authored. It's called Russia's USO Secrets, all about things seen underwater in the former Soviet Union, which is also in Portuguese and Italian and Russian, believe it or not.
No.
Got any Russian listeners, you can buy it in Russia. But I said, do you realize that one of the best documented close encounter cases has a sighting just a couple of weeks later in the same general area, something underwater, witnessed by civilians and the Coast Guard, and none of them's ever been interviewed. I don't know if any of them's still around. I mean, there must have been, with the witnesses and the Coast Guard, there must have been upwards of a dozen or more people involved. So surely you'd think out of all that lot, at least one or two of them might still be around today. Because when you see the photograph in the book of the witnesses, they don't look that old. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if they were in their 20s or 30s, they'll still be in their 60s or 70s now, you know. Same with the Coast Guard. So they said, oh, interesting. So, well, you know, it'll take some research. The kind of research they can do is much more than I can do sat in my little house in Pontefract, you know what I mean? But it's on my list of things to at least try and do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No, it's quite funny. We was talking the other day, weren't we? And you was like, I think I'm there now. And then we've got other bits and pieces and stuff coming out. I mean, was there anything ever left by Charlie? Like other documentation and stuff like that, Phil?
It was. And again, some of it slipped through our fingers. Again, I think it was a book signing that Calvin was doing, and two gentlemen came up to him and said, we actually own the house where Charlie used to live, but they rent it out. And we've got a box of his stuff. Do you want it? So Calvin says, yeah. And they gave him a business card and we're gone. Now, I've phoned the telephone number on the business card dozens of times with no reply. And we can't find these two gentlemen now. The same phone number now is now dead. It's no longer in service. So whether they've moved on somewhere else or not, what was in the box, we don't know. What I do know, finding some old interviews online with Charlie Hickson, is that there is one where he's interviewed in his house and there is letters everywhere, you know. And I know it's easy to do, to write to somebody, even if you don't know their address. It's amazing what the post office can do, but they had stacks of paperwork everywhere, you know. So what was in any of that, I don't think we'll ever know. I tracked down his son and his grandson, and they said, no, you know, everything went when he died, as far as we're aware. What was in the house went with it, you know. So there will be things, but probably lost forever. But you never know. You know, we live in hope. Now, we mentioned Alan Hynek coming down. Alan Hynek actually used the publicity around this case to launch what became the Center for UFO Studies. It began in 1973. And it is said that this was his favorite case of anything he was ever involved in.
Wow.
And Calvin had Hynek's home telephone number. And again, at the conference that's recently been in Phoenix, he met Hynek's son. Hynek's dead, Paul Hynek. And Paul says, I remember you ringing to speak to my dad. And he says, we used to have a chalkboard next to the telephone, and I would write the message on the chalkboard. And he said, I said to you, I'll write. And you said, no, go and tell your dad it's Calvin Parker. He'll speak to me. You know what I mean? So Paul and Calvin are now friends. And they just did a radio show with George Knapp on Coast to Coast, the pair of them together. And Calvin's just organized to send Paul Hynek a copy of his latest book as well.
Fantastic.
So what is also alleged, and we're pretty sure it's correct, is that Hynek had his own personal file on Pascagoula. It wasn't kept in the office. He kept it at home. And when he died, it's gone.
Oh.
We kind of found out, I think I know where it went to, but the fellow it went to has also died. His stuff that went to somebody else has also died. So we've reached a bit of a dead end, but we believe
literally
that there is Alan Hynek's file. There may be nothing more in it than we've already uncovered. It may just be some correspondence, whatever, but it would still be nice to read it, you know, even if it's personal correspondence between the two. Because in those days, certainly in America, the way to communicate was either on the telephone or in a letter.
Yeah.
No emails or anything like that. I'll give you an example. I read today, believe it or not, online in the New York Post. They're talking about a UFO landing that happened in 1987 at a place called Voronezh in Russia. or was the Soviet Union then. And there's various, doctors saying, yeah, it really did happen. The story was released originally by the Soviet news agency TASS. So when the Western media got in touch with TASS and said, are you like, is this a joke? And they said, in the typical stern Russian manner, we don't joke.
No.
You think, what's the connection? There's no real connection with Pascagoula. However, at the time, I was contacted by a Russian newspaper called Izvestia. And they asked for my comments about this thing. I'd only read the same as everybody else, so I said whatever. And apparently this was a very big selling newspaper. And so Philip Mantle from Batley, I lived in Batley then, was mentioned in this news. They sent me a copy of it. All I could tell was my name. No idea what it said. But shortly afterwards, I started receiving letters from Russia. And all it said was Philip Mantle, UFOs, Batley, England. And they got to me.
Wow.
From Russia with love.
From Russia with love. And then books came, magazines, So what I'm saying is about in 1973, how would they find Charlie Hickson? Because there he is on TV with a room full of letters. Well, they would write Charlie Hickson, UFO, whatever, Pascagoula, and somehow they'd find their way there. And this is how I first got in touch with my colleague Paul Stoller, because some of the letters were in English, but most of the stuff that came was in Russian. There's no Google Translate or anything like that then. So I knew of Paul and I contacted him, and eventually I had a box full of this stuff, and I shipped it off to Paul. Paul's originally from the Ukraine, and he left the Ukraine as a teenager. He escaped from the Soviet Union. He was even on the KGB wanted list because he helped other people get out as well. His real name's Pavel, but he lives in California and he's a US citizen, smashing guy. And Paul and I have worked together on and off for years. So what I'm saying is, even though people don't know your exact address, the old-fashioned way when they would write to you, it's amazing how the mail used to turn up, And I knew my postman very well. He used to say, "What the hell have you been doing now, Philip? Look at this. So you're not supposed to look at me post, And he used to just laugh. So, things like that do happen. So whatever happened to Charlie's pile of material, we don't know. We do know he kept a journal because he had one page of his handwritten journal in his own book, which I reproduced. So that there was a journal somewhere. What's in it, God only knows, or was in it. But then again, like with Calvin, most of his stuff was lost in the hurricane, his stuff could have gone the same way. But we do know that as of last year, there was a box of things. What was in it, we don't know. It may just be letters. And that is still around somewhere, unless they've put it in the junk. So, like we say, we don't know what's going to happen. So we're on the hunt for that still. I said, if those two guys turn up again, Calvin, I said, get your wife Wayne to get one of them in a headlock and send him off to get the box of stuff, and you're not letting him go until he brings it back,
Yeah.
And Calvin's got himself a bit better organized, because none of us knew people were going to turn up and say this kind of stuff,
Yeah. And the thing as well is, like, he's got such a high profile now. I mean, beforehand, he stated many times he wanted nothing to do with it. He didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to think about it. Kept moving around, so he wasn't confronted with it by other people.
This is how it all started, Jimmy. Now, I got the rights to reprint Charlie Hickson and when original 1983 book. And while I'm working on it, I thought, well, I think Calvin is still alive. It'd be nice to get an interview with him, just to sort of bring things up to date. Maybe stick it in the back of the book or whatever. So it took me 3 months to find him. By that time, the book was already published anyway, but I still carried on because it was one of those cases that I'd always liked for donkey's years. And when I found him, it was a bit standoffish, Unbeknown to me, not that long before, he'd been to an old pal's funeral, and on the way out, he wrote his name in, I don't know if it was a book of condolence or something, but he wrote, Calvin Parker. Some of the others behind are sort of going, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Are you the Calvin Parker, And it upset Calvin. He thought that was disrespectful.
Mm-hmm.
So his wife said, well, why don't you write a book and everybody can find out for themselves? And he said, yeah, he was just trying to, like you do, you always agree with the wife, even if you don't agree, you know what I mean? Yeah, I'll do that later. I'll paint that bathroom in a month.
Yeah. I'm always right when she lets me be.
Yeah. So Calvin kind of did the same thing. And then roughly, a few weeks later, I was given his email address and boom, email from me pops up. And when I spoke to him, again, he said, yeah. But he didn't really mean it. But with the two of us combined, he really couldn't get out of it in the end. He said to me, I think he'd only done this to, again, appease the wife. He said, I've already made a start, Philip. So I'm thinking, great, this is going to be a start on a book. We'll sail through it here. Basically, he made some notes, about half a dozen pages, and that was it. I think it might have just been something he could show the wife and say, look, I've started. Look, they're here, look, But he doesn't regret it now. He's glad he's done it, So that's how it all started from his friend's funeral, and he thought it was disrespectful. They're there to pay respects to his late friend. Never mind who the hell I am. And he still finds it funny. I mean, one lady sent him 20 photographs of him from Florida for him to sign.
Wow.
And he finds it peculiar. Why the hell anybody would want a signed photograph of him? Yeah. And she put $20 in the envelope for the postage back. And he's such a lovely fellow. He said, I'm not going to spend that $20 on the postage. When the new book's out, I'm going to send her a copy of the new book.
He is such a lovely, lovely, genuine guy. I mean, that chat we had with him when we had him on beforehand, we had a bit of a chat beforehand. I mean, you just get he's just like that guy that you've known for ages. He's just so soft, gentle, genuine.
And he said, I don't care whether you believe me or not. I'm telling the truth, and that's it. If you don't believe me.
It's his story.
And not only that as well, I mean, Phil, we've met each other, we know each other, we know people, and there is nothing about that guy at all which is fake, making up or anything. You look into those eyes, that story is his story. That event occurred.
When you listen to the hypnosis, it doesn't always come across, no matter what you put in brackets or whether you put in bold, is the emotion.
Yeah.
Now, in the hypnosis with Bud Hopkins, Calvin actually screams in fright, and I mean scream, and it's not a pleasant thing to hear, And then in the one with Kathy, he doesn't scream, but he gets a little bit emotional.
Mm-hmm. And there's some moments as well, isn't there?
Yeah. And that's hard. It's not impossible to fake, but it's with a guy like Calvin, he doesn't show his emotions a lot. He likes to be, I'm a good old boy, I'm a tough old boat, which he is. And it's like at the unveiling of the marker, he was in tears. And we know this because the TV were there and they filmed it, and they weren't crocodile tears either. They were the genuine article. And then the story about the bologna sandwich is the other side of things. It's not the kind of thing you make up during an alien abduction, is this joke about your wife's bologna sandwich. And he just said, I don't care whether you believe me or not, I'm telling the truth. I don't know what happened to me. I can remember, this is what I remember. I don't know whether they were alien. He said, I've done some dumb things. He said, once he was tracked down by the news media. And he thought, if I give them a story, they'll go away, So he told them he thought they were demons. And he said, I don't believe that at all. But of course, that got into the news media at the time. And so, he regretted doing that. But he said, one of the reasons he didn't want to write a book is because it'd been sort of misrepresented in the media so many times. I said, well, Calvin, if you write the book, it's your words.
Yeah.
No one can misrepresent you. It's your story. Yeah. And I said, we will not publish anything until you sign it off. If you're not happy with anything. So, like I said, during the second book, he took ill for a while. So some of the things we filled in because we didn't know how long his illness was going to take. But he still signed it off. He still double checked everything, you know. And there were things that he wrote rough, and I rewrote and sent back to him, and he said, "No, this is what happened." It went backwards and forwards a few times, and that worked pretty well. And so he's got nothing to hide, you know. And we'll see what's happening. We'll see what happens next.
Yeah. I mean, it must be such a roller coaster for him at the moment. I mean, doing like, you know, the UFO Congress. I mean, I saw the picture of him and Travis Walton together, which, I mean, that is an amazing picture just in its right. Yeah. I mean, two people of the most sort of like famous abduction stories of all time in the same place, in the same time, doing the same. I mean, that was amazing. And then what was it? Fade to Black with Jimmy Church. He was on Coast to Coast. I mean, he must be like having such a whirlwind, and like I
mean, he now enjoys it. He said, but my life before this, Philip, he said, I used to love going fishing, and I still do, but that's all I did. But he says, now I go to these places, or I go online or whatever, and I speak to some other, you know, some lovely people.
Yeah.
So he's made friends, you know, he's found lost friends, you know, old friends like Charlie's family. Some of them had wandered off. We didn't know where they were. But he's now reconnected with them. He says it's brought him closer to his wife and family because they finally know the whole story. I mean, it affected him. I mean, his wife told me the story. She sent him for some bread one day. He came back 2 weeks later. You know, he doesn't drink. He went on a bender, and he ended up in New Mexico. You know,
standard.
Yeah, and he got
the lying and the deceit and not telling everything that he found it hard to actually deal with it.
Stress and strain of like holding on to something like that must really take its toll on someone.
He wanted to die. Yeah. He wanted to die. I don't know if he told you the story where he thought he rang his insurance company up. He got life insurance. He said, "Am I covered for suicide?" And they said no.
Damn it!
I've got an idea. Goes into a cowboy bar, picks a fight with half a dozen cowboys, beat the living daylights out of him, but they didn't kill him. He said, I staggered out, disorientated, spun around and walked back in and got another thumping, but it still didn't kill me, you know. Now he thinks he's funny, you know, but he was so depressed, and he puts it all down to this encounter in 1973, you know, and I can understand that, you know. And he just laughs about it now, you know. There's all kinds of little things like that. What we've often said, the Alien Abduction Club is the kind of club nobody wants to be a member.
No, you know? Like 27. No thanks.
But he is a member, and he's often, people have asked him, "Would you change anything?" And I remember one podcast he did. He said, "Yeah, I would have shoved Charlie out front and had a run." And he said, "I wish it had never happened." You know, he'll tell you that time and time again. He said, because I had my life planned out. Winner was his childhood sweetheart. He was a couple of years older than her. He actually met her. He was driving the school bus, and she was on the school bus. But he was only a couple of years older than her. She was 15. He was 17. They got engaged the following year, you know. And he said, marriage, kids, mortgage, grandchildren, die. You know, have a great life doing that. He said, the following year, this happened. And that was it. Any chance of any sort of normal life went out the window. I mean, it shows you how he thought at the time, because one of the things he thought was, if news gets out about this, I may not be able to marry Wayne. A father won't let me. Because at 16, I think your parents still had to give permission, you know. Yeah. And he was more worried about what his future father-in-law was going to say. You know, and of course,
I would have just let him anyway, because I mean, he wasn't exactly sort of like the smallest of guy, was he? I mean, he was pretty buff back in the day.
He was a tough guy. He said, in our family, my brother was the brains and I was the brawn. Mm-hmm. So if anybody messed with my brother at school, they knew they got me to worry about. He said, I would never pick a fight. you know. But if somebody wanted one, well, fair enough, you know.
Yeah.
Fair enough, you
We
know.
had the Crays in America, had the Parkers.
Yeah, yeah. And of course, he idolized his brother. And if you go back to one of his early encounters, he's sharing the bedroom with his brother. You know, they'd seen this thing during the day, and then his brother said the ghost came and blew in his ear. Well, it's not the ghost; it's this strange-looking woman. You know, it's a strange-looking woman. And when the incident in 1973 happened, Calvin actually lived in Laurel. It was his first day working there.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So he went back home, 200 miles away, with his brother. And I think it was 3 weeks later, he said, I just started shaking and I couldn't stop shaking. So my brother took me to the hospital, and they're in what they call the ER. And Calvin's getting a bit miffed that they're not seeing a doctor. They've been waiting and waiting. So he says to his brother, go get me a soda out of the car. He said, I didn't really want a soda. I wanted to get rid of my brother. As soon as his brother's out of the way, he picks a wheelchair up and tosses it across the ER. He said, I soon got attention then, and the doctors soon came after that. He got his brother out of the way. He didn't want to get his brother in any trouble, you know. So that's how it affected him. He needed help, and his only way of doing it was to react like that. And he got assistance. Funnily enough, we wrote to the hospital and asked for his medical records. We didn't even get a reply. When I say we, Calvin wrote, you know, gave him he put his date of birth and everything on it. And I don't know if he put his social security number, but I certainly put his date of birth. It's Calvin Parker Jr., you know, his full name. Didn't even get a reply. Calvin was also went to train to be a Marine. Got chucked out during training. And we tried to get his records for why he was chucked out. I think somebody upset him. And, you know, if you understand what I mean. So they picked on the wrong one that day.
Knuckle sandwich.
Yeah, and he's worked around the world. He'll openly admit he didn't have any great education. But he worked in construction. He worked on the oil rigs. He's run his own business. But when it comes to mathematics, he's brilliant at it.
Mm-hmm.
And he can use calculus. And he's even gone to one of the local, I don't know if it's a college or high school, and taught engineering to the students, told them about it. Not as a teacher as such, but somebody in the community who's worked in that field, you know. And because somebody said, we heard Calvin on the podcast recently, and he talks about being taken on board this UFO in 1973, and his body's at I think he said a 16-degree angle.
Yeah.
So he says that's peculiar. Why would you say? Well, that's how Calvin's mind works, because in construction, in the oil fields and calculus, it's all about degrees and angles and feet and inches. So he would be able to figure out, I'm laid like this, it's such and such, and I wouldn't have a clue what 16-degree angle was.
I picked up on that as well. That was on that UFO hub one.
I don't know which one it was.
Yeah,
UFO hub. Know that because of his life experience. That's how he works. Yeah. You know, you ask him who the hell Shakespeare was, and he'd probably say, "No, I've never met the fella." You know, I'm sure he's a nice guy. We'll have a drink together one day. But you know.
Phil, are you ready for some questions?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right, let's get it on.
Okay. Here we go. John, how is the movie coming along?
That's an interesting point. Calvin signed up with a producer not too long after his first book came out. So what the producer has done in the meantime, after a lot of toing and froing, he actually employed a screenwriter. The screenwriter went down to Pascagoula, met Calvin, met some of the local townsfolk and so on. And he wrote the screenplay. Now we got to the third draft of the screenplay, and there was only a couple of alterations. At that point, the opportunity of having hypnosis with Kathy Marden came up. So the screenwriter was sent back to Pascagoula again, and he actually sat in on the hypnosis. He also went to speak to some of the other eyewitnesses that we'd uncovered and so on, which we didn't have at the beginning. So once he'd done all that, he then had to go back and rewrite some of what he'd already written. He's got the audio recordings of the various hypnosis sessions, plus the printouts, plus the books, plus all kinds of other stuff. And again, the common denominator in the screenplay is this woman, this non-human woman, or whatever you want to call her. She's the main sort of thread. The two main characters in it are her and Calvin. That's about all I'm allowed to say, you know. And it's fascinating what's written. It's very, very different. It's quite dark at places, you know, because it's a dark story as well. It's quite light in other places. So because he's been down there only on September the 4th, it's only 4 weeks ago, you know, there's been a delay. So we are literally expecting the fourth draft of the screenplay any day now.
Wow.
You know, and then of course I'll read it, although I have no say in it. You know, Calvin will read it, and if he has any objections, he'll voice them. The last draft of it, there was only a couple of little tiny things that needed changing as far as Calvin was concerned, and that was it. Wow. Once everybody's happy with it, you know, this is what the producer reckons, and he's not a man to say things like this easily. He thinks he has the opportunity to make a movie that they'll still be talking about in 100 years' time. Mm-hmm. So we'll see. You know, I tend to agree with him.
Yeah.
But we'll see. You know, now
the actors. I mean, I'm willing to play the part of the sandwich.
I'll play the part of the woman. But what is, again, this, we found things out about this story and how it spread. Believe it or not, there was an Italian company, TV company, actually made a movie about it.
Wow.
In Italian. And it was on a station called RAI, R-A-I. And I found it online, and it's a 2-part, looks like a TV film in black and white, and it's the Pascagoula case.
Wow.
Is there a subtitled version of it, Phil?
No,
or is it?
I just did a search one day because I was trying to find old TV clips, because Calvin didn't really do any. So I was looking for ones of Charlie Hickson, and I saw this thing, and it looked vaguely familiar, but it was in a foreign language. I thought, I'll have a look at it anyway. Now, I recognise RAI because I've been in Italy, and I've actually been on RAI television myself. So I knew what it meant. And it's I could figure it out, you know, by watching it. And it's a 2-part TV film about Charlie and Calvin.
Wow.
And I asked Calvin, I said, you know anything about this? He said, no, not a clue. Not a clue. Now, again, in an interview that we found online that Charlie Hickson did, he says in this interview, we had movie offers, but I turned them down. Not we turned them down, I turned them down. But with no supporting evidence of that. Mm. However, again, in the new book, there is an article in there from a chap called Antonio Hunias. Antonio was a very well-known UFO researcher in the 80s and 90s. He's gone off the radar. I think he may have been ill, but I don't know. And he got very friendly with Charlie. And he wrote a special article that we found all about Charlie and Charlie's presentation somewhere. And in this, he mentions in this article about Charlie turning down the movies. So we had supporting testimony that Charlie, for whatever reason, had said no. But whether any of them knew about this Italian thing, Calvin certainly didn't. Whether Charlie did or not, I don't know. I think I've got a link to it. Guys.
Yeah, I'm trying to have a look at the moment, see if I can find it and stick it in the chat room.
It is there, but what I've done, I've got a file and I put all the links on this file with a little description of what it is, so I don't forget the links then, you know. but it was staggering. Now, I might be getting carried away somewhat. I don't know who asked the question about the movie, but we'll go back to Alan Hynek. Right?
No.
Alan Hynek is the close encounters man. He invented the term close encounters. It was a way to categorize UFO sightings. He went on to work on the movie with Steven Spielberg, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I recommend this book. It's by Mark O'Connell. It is the Close Encounters man. It's the biography of Alan Hynek.
Oh, wow.
Is that CORRELL?
It's Mark O'Connell, NNELL. The Close Encounters man. Great book. And again, on Mark's website, he was in raptures because he said, Calvin Parker, my favorite case, he's got a new book coming out. And he kind of, and one or two others have confirmed that Pascagoula was Hynek's favorite case. So I've suggested to the producer, what are the chances of when Hynek was working with Spielberg that he may have actually told him about the Pascagoula case, although it didn't end up in Close Encounters. There's no connection there.
No.
But surely there's a good chance he may have mentioned it. So I said, once you've got the screenplay ready, why not give it a try? Why not go for broke?
Yeah. Start
with him and say, oh, by the way, mention, because I had to explain to this producer who Alan Hynek was. He'd no idea, and once I explained it to him, now Calvin's become friends with Hynek's son, Paul Hynek. I'll give you a little example. Calvin and Paul Hynek were on Coast to Coast with George Knapp.
Mm-hmm.
What George didn't know is that Calvin's got Paul's mobile telephone number. So while they're chatting, he texted him and he said, what did you have for dinner tonight? So Paul Hynek says, I had a lasagna, one of them cheap things you get from the store. So Calvin says to George Knapp, me and Paul have now developed a very close bond. So close, I can even tell you what he had for his dinner tonight. And he said, what did he have? He says, a lasagna, a cheap one from the store. So George asked him, is that right? He says, yeah. He said, how the hell does he know that?
We like that. That.
But they actually met at the Congress. And there's a little interview with them that Steve Willis did. And all they're doing is sort of laughing at each other. They obviously got on instantly. Yeah. So I've said to Calvin's producer, why don't you see if you can't get a foot in the door with Spielberg? Why not?
Yeah.
What are the chances of Hynek actually mentioning it to him? Probably. There's a good chance. Anyway, we'll see what happens. But first, we have to get the screenplay signed off, done and finished.
Yeah.
What he then intends to do is set up his own website about the movie only, not about Calvin. Calvin's got his own website. I've got a little blog, but there will be, he's already checked out domain names. So I think he may have already bought one. So it will be just about the movie. We've tossed ideas around. And here's something else I'll tell you about what to call it. And we've got various ideas. Now, a gentleman got in touch with us on social media and he said, there's a saying. Now, bearing in mind, in Calvin's encounter in Pascagoula, the first thing they see in front of them is the river. It's dark. The things that alert them that something odd's happening is the blue lights from behind them shine on the river. There's a saying in Pascagoula, apparently, that says when you have black water and a blue moon, strange things happen in Pascagoula, right? So I suggested Black Water, Blue Moon might be a great title for a movie with a subtitle about whatever. Anyway, just recently, a chap called Johnny Cobb and his partner, Jerry McCoy, who are musicians. Johnny Cobb is a Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter.
Yeah, I've just added him.
He's a master blues guitarist, and they have almost finished writing a song about Calvin's encounter called Blackwater Blue Moon.
Wow.
They hope to have it finished next week. I was hoping to have it finished by yesterday, for the anniversary. However, they're doing it off their own, what the Americans call it, their own dollar.
Yeah.
Nobody asked them to do this. They've come up with they've got Calvin's 2 books, which they think are amazing. So that will be hopefully ready next week or so. Once it's ready, I'm going to pass it on to Calvin's producer and say, because he's done some music stuff. He's a musician himself as well. And you've got a song for your movie, maybe. But isn't it lovely that somebody would do that anyway, Yeah. And I've listened to some of the music these gentlemen do online, and they had damn fine musicians.
It's not bad, is it? I had a listen, I think it was yesterday or the day before yesterday, because he came up on my list, and you was a mutual friend.
Yeah.
So I thought, I'll check it out. And hit him up for a friend request and that. And like you, I went through the music and I was really, really impressed. It was just, it was nice. Yeah.
And there's a picture of him, like all well-done musicians with all the gold discs, silver discs sung on the back wall. I haven't got any of them, I'm afraid. Here's another little funny thing. Do you know that Charlie Hickson made a single?
No.
He made a 45 RPM single narrating what happened to him. He's not singing, it's a narration. Now, I've only ever seen a picture of it. My colleague, Stephanos, in Greece, has actually got the single. And the sleeve is actually autographed to him. And he got that when he met Charlie Hickson in 1981.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've even seen, I think I've got a newspaper cutting when it was actually advertised for sale for, I don't know how many cents or dollars, you know what I mean? Yeah. And there was also a religious guy who did a sermon about it, and you could buy that on a I don't know if it was a 45 or an LP as we used to call it, but there was a sermon about it as well. I've seen the cover for it, but the actual vinyl Stephanos has in Greece. So I'm going to try and get another thing to do is try and get Stephanos to just say, is there any way you can take the audio off it for us? I'm sure there'll be somebody that can do that. And let's just have a listen to it, Yeah. It's his prized possession, and I don't blame him. So, maybe in this box of goodies that the guys that owned Charlie Hickson's house, maybe there might be another one in there somewhere. Who knows? Because in those days, you could go to some of the little places and cut your own record, sing, say, scream, whatever. And, they print them off almost like, you pay for it. You know, you used to be able to do that in Leeds. When I was a lad, you could go to a little recording studio, record your record, and they would make you how many ever you wanted to pay for, Not that I ever did, because, I have no musical talent at all. But, another odd little thing that pops up. So here we now have got 2, professional musicians writing a song about it as well.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Wow. Okay, we're going to the next question. Did Charles Hickson have any other experiences before or after the 73 incident?
Yeah, both. Same as Calvin. When you when you listen to the regressions, the 2 regressions that Bud Hopkins did, both concentrate. The first one's not that great quality, so there's a lot of gaps in it when it says inaudible. You just couldn't hear what they were saying. But Bud concentrates on, again, 2 incidents that happened when he was a young lad, because he kept talking about his ankle. So in the second one in 1989, the audio was a lot better, and he goes into it in much more detail. In Charlie's own book, he mentions him in his own book, and then he talks about another encounter that was witnessed by not only by him but his whole family as well, and it's called the Mother's Day sighting, because it was Mother's Day, and they'd been to see Charlie's mum, and they were all coming back in the family car, a whole charabanc full of them, when they saw this thing almost. Now, you see, Charlie became a contactee. He claimed to have messages from whatever these things were. And there was a couple of occasions where he would get a message but didn't see anything. So on the Mother's Day sighting, he thought this was the culmination. He wanted to get out of the car, and this thing apparently was coming down. He thought it was landing. And this was whatever. He thought something marvelous was going to happen, and this was it. But his family prevented him from going. So the answer is yeah, he had a couple of encounters as a young man. He had some funny experiences afterwards, and then a sighting by him and all his family that were in the car at the time. They were screaming at him, you know, and I think it was his brother, his son-in-law, who said, sod this, we're off, we're gone. I think his son-in-law was driving. Had Charlie been driving that day, things might have turned out differently. You know? You have to remember as well about Charlie, he was a tough old boot. He'd been in the military, and he'd served in the Korean War and fought in a number of very large battles. And we happened to find a couple of pictures of him in his military days online, and they're actually in the book as well, you know. We just found them by accident. But what's interesting, you see, when the thing happened in 1973, Charlie used his military experience to help him, because they're on board this thing, and he thinks they're going to kill us. They're going to kill us. If they're going to do it, get it over with. Do it now. But then he goes back to his days fighting in Korea, and he remembers they were pinned down by the enemy one day, and his commanding officer said, "Stay cool, Charlie. Just stay cool. An opportunity will arise if we're patient, where we can get the hell out of here." So we used that on board the UFO, and he thought, no, I'll just stay patient. And I'll look for an opportunity. And when it comes, we'll get the hell out of here. Whereas poor old Calvin was only 18 at the time. There he is. There's Charlie. In his military days, he's the guy in the middle.
Let's try and get a little bit closer. Right. Yeah. Right, so everything's back to front on this setup.
It's still in the middle, back to front or not, he's still in the middle. There he is. There's only one person there, so that has to be him. But that's him in his military days. Yeah, amazing.
This book is really, really good, mate. The amount of stuff you've got in there is ridiculously awesome.
The Korean War is probably one of the forgotten wars of modern 20th century warfare, you know. And he was in the thick of it, apparently, at times. But poor old Calvin had no experience like this to fall back on. He was 18, you know, still a young guy, just setting out. Yeah. So, again, the answer to that question, yeah, he had some encounters before and after, as did Calvin, of course, you know.
Okay. So, next one.
Has Calvin's children had any experiences or other family members?
Calvin has one daughter, and he did have a son, but sadly he passed away. Daughter has nothing. He's nothing to account for, really. He thinks maybe his parents may have had a UFO sighting at some point, but it's still pretty much rather vague. It's nothing definitive, you know. So I'd have to say pass on that, really.
Yeah. Okay. Has his encounters always involved water? Well, we know that's not the case, isn't it?
No, the first two, when he was a young kid, you know, happened when he was at home, nowhere near the water. One when he was 9, they just saw this strange woman with no face, you know, staring in over the fence. I mean, that would have scared the bejesus out of you. I mean, I lived with some pretty unusual people like that, you know what I mean? And then one a few years later was still at home in Laurel, which is nowhere near any water, you know. So no, I would have to say no to that, no.
Okay. Has anyone remote viewed the Pascagoula abduction?
Not that I'm aware of.
No.
You know, I'm not aware of that. Maybe somebody might claim to it, but I don't know of anything like that at all, no.
No. Let's see if there's any other questions. I can't remember if there was any more. We'll ask it. What are your views on the TTSA?
Yeah, I mean, it's got its critics, probably in some respects justified. I think in other respects not. All I would say about the TTSA, without going into any great detail, you know, they certainly hit the headlines in a very positive way in late 2017. And whatever you think about how they operate and some of the claims they've made, they've actually brought the UFO subject into the mainstream.
Yeah.
That's not an easy thing to do. It's come from an unlikely source, you know, a rock star, rock musician. So all the UFO researchers who bitch about it, well, fine, you know, you're entitled to your opinion. But none of them, including me, have been able to do what they've done.
No,
very true.
I mean, we had the very same conversation earlier, didn't we?
Yeah, when they first came about, I said, let's just be patient and see what happens. They brought a very positive amount of information out, which has been now supported with the naval witnesses and pilots and so on. And let's just give them the chance and see where it goes. If it goes off on a tangent, then perhaps the criticism will be justified. If not, then no harm done. But, you know, nobody knew about, you know, the Department of Defense secret UFO project. I don't care which UFO research claims they may have done. They didn't. Nobody knew of anything about it. But this fella did.
Yeah.
No, Tom DeLonge. I haven't been in touch with him. I've been in touch with his wife. We have exchanged emails. I tried just to, you know, get some information. Didn't get any, but I tried. But I would give it, at the moment, I'd say the jury's still out, but, you know, they're not perfect. I mean, the guy's a rock musician. If he was absolutely 100% spot on, I think there's somewhat fishy going on here, you know, but he isn't, which is what I would expect.
Very knowledgeable as well in what he's doing.
I mean, the thing is, I mean, we followed Tom DeLonge as a musician for many, many, many years. And we know all the time that he was touring and stuff like that. You know, he was reading Bill Cooper's, you know, Behold a Pale Horse and all these other different bits and pieces of different encounters and UFO abductions and UFO sightings and things like that. So he's well, you know, averse to the subject himself. So, you know, he's going to know a fair bit. And, you know, anyone that follows that dream, you know, good on them.
Yeah, and why not a musician? Why not a rock musician? Why not? Maybe he just got lucky. Maybe he was just more determined. Maybe he was able to do it behind the scenes, because nobody would expect that Tom DeLonge knows anything about this or knows anything, you know, or has connections with this guy and that guy. He would be probably the last person you would think of. So I think there's a lot of envy, you know, which there always is in this subject, which is unfortunate, you know.
Yeah.
Somebody will write a best-selling book and he'll be accused of all kinds of things, you know.
Yeah.
Which is not the case. So I think, you know, the jury's still out. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. You know, they've put the subject into the mainstream in a very positive manner.
Yeah.
So what's wrong with that?
No, absolutely. I mean, like, I know, like, you haven't like spoke with Tom, but I did have the luxury of being able to meet him in person a good few years ago. He was on tour with Angels and Airwaves, and they were going over to France on my ship. So I managed to sort of like go up and have a chat with him, and you know, I found him to be nothing more than an absolute gent, and he was a gentleman. You know, pulled the chair out for me. You know, it just made me feel really comfortable.
Obviously, when you say your ship, this wasn't your own private yacht. You're actually a merchant seaman.
Well, you know, maybe there's things that you don't know. No. But yeah, and you know, I found it to be an absolute gent. So, you know, we'll see. Time will tell. But again,
the thing about
to agree on about TTSA is they've managed to achieve more, getting it out there, getting it known, making it public than anyone else has.
Yeah.
So, you know,
absolutely, Jimmy. I mean, the thing about well-known, we'll call them entertainers, be it musicians or actors or in that profession, it's amazing who they actually do know. You know, because we forget that they have fans, and some of those fans can be in the most unusual places. It's not just your average Joe public, you know.
I mean, I've spoke to certain people on Twitter, and they hold jobs that you would never just not think of, but yet they've invested and stuff. And we've had like private conversations, and yeah, it's the most unlikely lot. So you've got everyone from sort of like the usual tinfoil hat guy to people that hold like very, very, very good jobs in public service, you know.
I mean, I just wish them every success. Let's just give them the benefit of the doubt, and let's see how things progress. And if they can't come with the goods, then perhaps the critics are right. But if they do, then all well and good. And, you know,
same as anything. Only time will tell, Phil.
Yeah. And I mean, there's still a long way to go. Still a long way to go.
Okay, this isn't a question, but it's a comment, and I think it needs answering because obviously it's something that's to do with behind you. Right. Photo or print on your wall has been confusing, scaring me for a while. Hard to work out what it is, and I have a bird or a cat or something more.
Oh,
what is it?
It's a painting. It's an alien.
There you go.
Yeah, it's an original painting done by a friend of mine. It's an old pal of mine. We've been pals for a long time. He was actually a special effects artist of some repute. And I actually met him, in inverted commas, when he was working on Lord of the Rings in New Zealand with Peter Jackson. So I didn't meet him in person. He's from the UK, but he read one of my books, and he wrote to me from New Zealand. And we corresponded, we phoned and then email and so on. Became good buddies. And he came back to live in the UK. He packed in the special effects game. Sadly, he's been ill since then. That's one of his paintings. The light's shining on it. You can't get a good view of it. I used it on the cover of one of my books, and it is an amazingly detailed painting. He's the type of special effects guy could do it all, apart from the CGI. So he's a fantastic artist, model maker, prosthetics, pyrotechnics, you name it, set building, photography, camera work, the whole lot. I mean, I was actually with him today. He lives in Leeds, just down, just a few miles away. Sadly, he took ill and he can't do it any longer. But he's an amazingly artistic guy, and I've got other paintings that you can't see around the room that it actually is. And so that's a painting of an alien he did for me. And it is, the detail in it, when you see it properly, is amazing. It really is.
It's quite funny because the person that asked that is from New Zealand. They're an artist and they work on film sets.
Well, there you go. Well, he worked at Weta, so they'll know where Weta is. And that's the company that made, of course, Lord of the Rings. Rob, that's his name, was due to go to work on King Kong with Peter Jackson. Mm-hmm. But he'd had enough. He'd been in the special effects game all his life. He started off in London as an apprentice at the BBC. He's one of the weird little kids that used to hide in the shed and make his own little movies, stop motion. You're playing out? No, I'm making a film, yeah, you weirdo. What kind of films you make? Yeah, his hero is Ray Harryhausen. He's a great sci-fi fan, big Doctor Who fan, Thunderbirds, all that kind of stuff. And when you see his flat in Leeds, it's got Thunderbirds here and Doctor Who there and War of the Worlds here, and but he prefers to stay out. Sorry?
What did you say his name was?
I didn't. I don't want to use his name. He's poorly and he doesn't like his name used. No, you don't have to say sorry. It's just, But again, I'm not just saying it because he's a friend of mine. He was already extremely talented before I met him. And when he was working on Lord of the Rings, we obviously went to see it. And my two girls were amazed by it. So he got them a full set of cast photographs. And there's even on the Lord of the Rings, the first one, when all is it the elves with the pointy ears?
Yeah.
Where they live in this place, is it Rivendell or Ravendell? Well, we've got part of that at home.
Wow.
There's Elvis writing in it, and like a banner, like bunting, but it's Elvis writing, and it's made of leather. And we have some of that. Well, I say we, my daughter has it, that he sent from New Zealand for us.
Wow.
And, you know, he's done all kinds of. He worked on the first movie that Nicole Kidman did in Australia. It's called BMX Bandits.
Yeah, we love the Bandits.
And he said she would have. How can I say it politely? A plump little thing then. And he actually made a cast of her arm because she was supposed to fall off the bike and break her arm. He said, I don't think it made the final cut. But he said, imagine if she'd have signed that cast and I'd have kept it. You know? He worked on Neighbours, believe it or not. He worked for MTV. I did a lot of MTV stuff. Because he got fed up in the UK. And it was easier to go work in Australia because he could get a visa rather than America. It's more difficult. However, he did go to work on Star Wars, the special edition, at the Lucas Ranch.
Oh.
And he's even got a map of the Lucas Ranch because I've got it.
Oh.
Yes. He said, this will make you laugh, Philip. He said, the Lucas Ranch where you go is supposed to be private. It's when you get there with a gift shop.
Yeah, how does that work?
Probably gone now, but so he worked there. He worked on all kinds of things. He did a lot. He used to run his own. He was self-employed, and so you could ring him up and say, "We're doing a play. We need this prop," and he would make you it. You know.
Wow.
So he'd do theatre stuff. He was out of work for a while. This is the gospel truth. He thought. Well, they don't call it out of work, do they? He's in between jobs.
Yeah.
So you remember what's his name? Freddy Krueger?
Yeah. He
actually made some huge masks of Freddy Krueger. And he thought, I'll sell a couple of these and it'll bide me over for a few weeks. In that year, he sold enough of these Freddy Krueger masks that he designed and made himself. It paid the mortgage off on his house. Just make Freddy Krueger masks.
Yeah.
He said the only reason he stopped, because he used to supply these stores, was that one of the reps came in and saw these masks hung up and they weren't the official merchandise.
Oh.
So he stopped making them. You know, but then he would work on other things, you know. And in that 1 year, making Freddy Krueger masks paid his mortgage off.
That's amazing.
That is insane.
He had a full-size replica that he made of E.T. in his back garden. And his father-in-law, he was married at the time, his father-in-law took a liking to it, so that went off with his father-in-law. When the local kids used to come knocking on the door, trick or treat, they'd have the little plastic mask with a rubber band going around. He'd be there in full werewolf head. Not only that, he'd made full heads for the neighbours' kids. So here you go, take them crappy masks off and have a decent one.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. He had his own workshop at home and he'd have, you know, spider heads hanging from the ceiling and limbs and things like this, you know. So that's my pal. And that's one of his paintings on the back wall. And he shares an interest in the UFO subject. That's how we met. He read my book and wrote to me.
Wow.
That is awesome.
And I delivered a copy of Calvin's second book to him today. So that was one of my reasons for going down there. So there you go. So that's what it is. That's the painting. And that is the original painting. It's not a print. That is the painting itself.
That is amazing.
Wow. Excellent. Phil, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
And remember, this is the new and revised book with all the witness statements and the evidence of the regressions, the tapes that have been all done by Phil. So they are all in there and it is amazing. Truly amazing.
I'm just putting the link back in there again.
Like I say, some of the information that is got through the regression is out of this world, literally out of this world.
It's a startling book, and I you know, I'm not being big-headed. It really is. You know,
yeah.
it's
the reviews have been amazing.
Yeah.
Like I say, the information that Kathleen got is wow. Like I say, it's
Absolutely
amazing.
Yeah,
Right.
if you're only going to buy one UFO book this year, that's the one to buy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Truly amazing.
We're going to treasure that.
Absolutely.
Get this on.
Thank you so much for joining us, Phil. It's been
Our pleasure.
Are you have you got a dash off, or do you want to stick around and have a little chat afterwards, Phil?
I've got to go. I've got to go make sure the wife's still awake.
Give her a nudge.
She'll be snoring in front of the TV.
Yeah, I hear that. Do me a favour, send her our love and thank her for letting us borrow you for the evening. I'm sure you probably had other things to do, but you chose to spend it with us. So thank you so much, Phil.
My pleasure, and I'm sure we'll meet again soon.
Yeah, there'll definitely be a message
Count
on the
on
way. All right, love you loads, mate. Thank you so much. Cheers.
Thank
Bye,
you.
mate.
Bye-bye.
Right, so
Wow. Absolutely amazing. Like I say, you must get that new revised book. Like I say, the witness statements are all in there from every single one that's come forward so far. The photos are amazing. Like I say, showed you some of the photos of Kelvin whilst in his bed having the regression done. The information that comes out through the regression is amazing. She doesn't put any words into his mouth. It is just prompts. He goes into information and she says, hang on a second, go back to that. I want to know everything and how you see it clearer. It's wow. Like I say, I spent the whole day today going through the regression tapes, reading every single thing. Yeah, Pat made a comment earlier. Did I fall asleep whilst reading it? Yes. While I was sat down, but whilst I was stood up, I read the whole lot. So yeah, that's my issue. If I sit down whilst doing anything, I'm asleep. So you're lucky I'm awake at the moment.
Yep, absolutely.
But an absolutely amazing book.
Have you got anything for us, folks, before we say our goodbyes or anything? Mika he's been staying very quiet. He has been around, in and out. So big shout out to Mika for.
Yeah, Paul, it is amazing book. It's the best buy that you will get. The information that you get from it. Yes, they've also done the book before that's got all the information of the Pascagoula case.
Just getting the reviews up.
But with the witness statements, the photos of the witnesses, their information of what they saw on the day, where they were in relation to where Calvin and name's gone. Calvin and Charlie were in relation to where they saw it.
Right. So some of the reviews. I mean, it's got 5 stars. 5 stars. This is one of the most important books on the subject of ufology ever produced by it. Another one, possibly the world's best documented abduction account, a must read. Although UFOs are considered strange and abduction stranger still, this book provides very convincing evidence for both. It is likely the best documented of any abduction account, and through the publishers adding it in several different languages, possibly the best known around the world. The witnesses are sincere, honest people who were as amazed as the reader would be, and their honesty was verified in a number of ways as discussed. The descriptions in this book are as lifelike and terrifying as those in any Stephen King novel, but these were real. I was very honored to be part of the research team and to meet some wonderful people in the process. Another one is from a MUFON chief investigator. Great new information never before released. The Pascagoula abduction is one of the most famous and well-documented cases in US UFO history. This case has been studied by the best minds in ufology, and there has never been a shred of evidence to discredit it. In this book, Calvin Parker has assembled an amazing collection of corroborating reports, documents, and new information which reinforces the report originally made in 1973. A must read. So John, thank you for joining us, and thanks for moderating. Love you very, very, very much, and have a great afternoon chasing Pokemon. Never thought I'd say that, especially on our show, Pokemon chasing. Anything for us?
No, enjoy being. You're very welcome for your Sunday morning start, obviously, in a different part of the world.
Thank you so much for joining us.
And Maggie, thank you so much. I look amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, I thought I'd dress down just to make Sarah look amazing this evening. Sorry about that, folks.
I don't care.
Hey, you know, sometimes you got it, sometimes you haven't, right? So
I got it.
enjoy being. Keep those videos coming. Very, very cool. Loving very, 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 very much. If you want, you can put a link to your channel in our chat room.
Yep, more than welcome.
Yep. Sorry, the dog's having a freak out. Next week, yes.
We have Ray Davis coming on again to visit us, talking affirmations.
Now, if you follow me on social media, especially Facebook, you'd see that I put a link out to some of Ray's stuff over this week. I have a book that he wrote called The Power to Be You, and it's daily affirmations. If you follow CW Chanting, you know that he does his chanting and other bits and pieces. Well, I do affirmations, which obviously this is all about. I'm not going to go too much into it because obviously we're going to hit that with Ray next week. But affirmations, very strong, powerful stuff, reinforce your mind, positive words. So yeah, it's an amazing thing. It's something that I do practice and I genuinely believe in. So hopefully you can join us for that. Anything from you, Mrs. P?
No, I don't think so.
Just the usual shout outs.
Yes, usual shout outs.
Right, shall we see whether or not we can do this between us?
Okay.
Mika Pearson,
who sat down there and has been very quiet. Well done to you.
Big shout out to Mika Pearson for being very quiet and being a good boy. Oh, Mika, do you want to quickly stick your head on and say hi to everyone?
Come on, get up.
I know you're. Where are you racing this evening?
Japanese.
Oh,
Japan.
Japan. Come and say hello to everyone.
Hey everyone!
He's alive. He's well.
Sadly, I am alive.
He actually spent a day at his new secondary school, which will be starting in September this week, didn't you?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So high school to the guys in America. So yeah, slowly integrating our little boy into being a big boy now.
It is a bit difficult because in America it's high school.
That's right.
And in
I'll tell you what, bet still. Yeah.
England.
Oh. Let me try and walk. Oh.
Walk it off, wee man.
It's all right. Anyone else that follows me knows that I'm struggling with back pain at the moment.
Yeah.
Come on, buddy. Go and sit on the sofa and say hi to everyone.
Come and sit next to Mama.
Oh, well, hello everyone. I am alive. I'm breathing, so that's all good. So anyway, in America it's high school, and in British it's secondary. Now that's a bit complicated because why don't they just have high school as all of them instead of secondary school and high school? Instead of mixing that all up, why don't you just put it as everywhere you go, high school? Please do tell me.
I don't know. There we go.
Hard people.
Thank you, Jeff. It has been an amazing show. So are you going to help with the shout outs?
I am indeed. Right, Mika, shift your bum.
Okay, so we will start with.
Hang on, wait. You can't do it till I'm back. Oh,
and he's down.
God. I look like a 40-year-old, but I got the body of a 90-year-old. Right, okay.
So, Philip Mantle for joining us. Thank you so much.
Big shout out to you, and big shout out to Calvin Parker, who I have spoke with this week. But he's very, very, very busy, so we're unable to get him onto the show. He was invited to come on this evening, but again, as you can see, he's been very busy. So I'm hoping that we can get Calvin on at some other point.
We will do.
So big shout out to Natasha Nix, Mysterious Forces Live.
My mind's gone blank.
Erik Stitt Art.
Yeah.
Brett Larson.
Brett Larson. That's
Inquire
it.
Within.
Inquire Within. I was going to inquire, but I couldn't think of who it was.
Dave Partridge, Shadows of Your Mind magazine. Our boys, Smoke and Jiggy at Paranormal Herd. Zen at unspirituality.com.
Who else have I got? I have trouble with names.
Planet
Carry on.
Looper. Big shout out to Planet Looper. Big shout out to Enjoy Being.
I can't think of it.
No, you are so
You're
bad.
the one that does this, not
You
me.
are so bad. You've done this more than enough now.
Carry on.
Big shout out to Dougie for being silly. Yeah, you, Fascination Street dog.
Puppy.
You coming over? You gonna come and say hi?
Come on.
This way. Come on in.
Come on in.
Who'd like a shout out? Ray and Dennis, obviously. Ray, who's going to be on next week at Sixth Sense Media and the Affirmation Spot.
Come on.
Come on in. This way.
Yeah.
There we go.
Hey,
We got the dog. We got the dog. Yep. Maggie, mwah, thank you for coming over, sweetheart.
Can't wait to see your art. Looking forward to that.
Quite excited.
Michelle Embry for doing your art. You are amazing.
If you're
and
still here, Michelle.
I think she's gone. She only popped in
Oh.
or pooped in, as she put it, but then corrected it.
She was pooping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So hopefully we will be getting that art to put on our wall. So looking forward to that. Are you not quite comfortable there, mate?
Douglas, what are you doing? Right, and for all those that didn't see it,
There it is.
where can we? Oh no, it's not going to go on cam properly. There it is.
It's getting it. There we go.
There we go.
Adjusting the light.
That's what we like. Michelle Embry, thank you so much for that picture. We love it. And just in case you're not sure, I'm the one front and with the hat on. So that's it. That's another show wrapped. That's another great show. I don't normally.
Another fascinating show. Absolutely brilliant. So
Fascination Street. See what you did there.
I know.
Oh, also this week, I'm not sure if you saw it. We put some links out. We do now have Fascination Street shirts.
Yeah, it is. The link is in the chat room,
and we'll be putting it in the description as well. We've been asked for quite some time when we're going to get some. We now finally have some. So
and they look awesome.
They do. They're our usual.
This art.
This
But you
artwork.
can have it either as a vest. You can have it as a long sleeve shirt.
You got ladies fitted
t-shirt.
ones.
Ladies.
Yep. Or if
Brilliant.
you're a man and you like wearing ladies ones, they're there for you as well.
Whatever you like. It's
Absolutely.
there.
So yeah, we finally have t-shirts now, so you can be part of the team. And we've done it, so we've tried to get it as cheap as we can for you guys, and we make just a tiny little bit, because when you do anything on Redbubble, it automatically marks up a 20% markup for the people that are selling it. So what we done was we turned it right down, because we're not in it for making money, and any of the money that we do make on it go straight back into the show anyway, because we've got some really good stuff planned. We've got some days out planned. So any money, you say, we buying tickets to go to places or just upgrading what gear that we've got. Enjoy Being, I can do underwear. I can do underwear, and I can also do ladies' leggings as well. You want that? I can do that for you. Oh, sorry. Right. So until next week, hopefully everyone has a really, really good week. Peace, love, one love to you all. Thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time.
Yeah. So look forward to next week with Ray Davis, and hope you all have a fantastic week. And from the Fascination Street crew, we wish you a great week.
We do indeed. See you later, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Bye.